Hey, welcome to this week's episode of The Influence Gap. And I have just come off the back of a half an hour conversation with Dr. Margie Warrell. For those of you who don't know who Margie is, she is a Forbes columnist. She is a former senior partner of Korn Ferry, and she has been operating in the field of courage and behavioral science and C-level execution and coaching for 25 years. And she brings to the table a wealth of personal experience and lived experiences as well. And so we have just had a conversation, and I've brought into the conversation leadership in the sales space today, and vulnerability and courage and speaking truth to power. And we've kind of dived down those rabbit holes and looking at the principles of her latest book, The Courage Gap, and the 5 steps to braver action. And I think today, more than ever, the need for us to be brave and to stand in a state of conviction and to be congruent doing so is really important. So let's dive into this episode, and let me introduce you now to Dr. Margie Warrell. Hey, this is Bernadette McClelland, and welcome to The Influence Gap. This is the show where leaders come to close the gap between intention and impact so that they can have the right conversations, make the right decisions, and achieve the results that matter the most. Well, Margie, it is wonderful to have you on The Influence Gap. I've really been looking forward to this conversation because I think it dovetails into my area, which is sales leadership and business development, and definitely in today's times. And I was just thinking before we jumped on, when the last time was that we met. I think it was at the Gaylord here at Denver International Airport, just out from the airport, when you had a keynote.
I think that was it. And you drove out there to meet me, and it was so lovely to see you. We've now
I
covered
did.
2 continents.
Absolutely. So I'm looking forward to this. So diving into this, I want to highlight the fact that you have just, well, not that long ago, published The Courage Gap. So I will welcome The Courage Gap to The Influence Gap. And
who would have thought I would have a copy here?
Absolutely. So you have spent, gosh, I think that's book number 6 or 7 for you.
Yeah, 6.
It's number 6. And your whole theme has been around courage for all these years. I'm curious, why courage?
Such a good question, Bernadette. So it's not courage that we wish for as much as courage is what it takes to get all the other things, the things that we wish for. And I am sure that you have worked with many smart people, many capable people, many people who've done all sorts of sales training courses and programs and know all the tips and tricks on how do you be more effective. And yet there's often a gap between knowing what to do and actually doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you peel back enough layers, Bernadette, there is fear that is driving the behaviors, that is keeping people from acting on what they know. And it takes courage to close that gap, that no-do gap. And so all the brains in the world, all of the information in the world isn't sufficient to help us, achieve what it is we want and enjoy more of the success we want unless it's paired with the courage to act.
Totally get you there. Totally walk that path. Still walk that path. I think
we all do. We all do. We never stop walking it.
Absolutely. And identity comes into that in such a big way as well. It's how we see ourselves. And I know that we're from a leadership perspective, especially in today's time, layoffs are happening. Numbers just aren't being met. We've got top talent turning over because they're watching leaders' behaviors. And so many leaders are actually living in that space of uncertainty and fear, not just from an economic perspective that we usually talk about, but from a visibility perspective.
Yeah,
Um, yeah.
I think we are living in a time where, yes, uncertainty is high. There's always been uncertainty, but it feels particularly high. The ground beneath us feels like it's moving. People feel disoriented because we are unable to predict with any kind of sense of confidence what the future holds. And the more uncertain the future, the more we turn our forecasts into fearcasts, the more we feel anxious. We start kind of racing for whatever will make us feel safer and give us a sense of control. And often that actually are the very behaviors that work against setting us up to succeed. And so, yeah, there's a lot of people who are feeling anxious. And when it comes to cultivating that courage, where we draw our identity has a pivotal role to play. And if you're trying to protect your sense of feeling like you're a winner, that you're someone who's important and your status, it actually can hem you in from doing the very things that would actually help you be more successful. And so we're often protecting the identity we hold of how we see ourselves, but that has us acting in a very defensive posture. Like we don't
I
want to try things unless we know we're going to win, unless we know we're going to succeed. And of course, if you're waiting until the fog is cleared and you know what you're doing is absolutely going to land you with the outcome you want, then you're not going to be taking anywhere near as much bold action as required to be adapting to change, to be learning at speed. And right now, the faster you learn is in itself a competitive advantage.
advantage, absolutely. And I see this very thing in the sales world where you have a high performing salesperson and they are promoted up into a leadership role. All is great until the end of the month or the end of the quarter or in the financial year or wherever where that scrutiny is on get the numbers. And what they end up doing, it can be one of a different, one of a few different kind of personalities come back out, is you turn into this controlling closer where you will step in and close the business because of your need to be in control, because that's how you used to run your sales territory when you were a salesperson. And the other, and of course, there's a cost there to the business because you're trading.
Yeah, you bet. Actually, it can be quite damaging to trust on multiple levels.
Yeah. And then the other part where I think I'm speaking to your point there is in family run businesses where you have maybe, you'll have the CEO and perhaps he's got to hold his brother-in-law accountable. And so that fear of, oh, I can't do that, like I can't have those conversations, but it impacts the business. So is that what you're saying? That's kind of flipping when you.
I mean, obviously there are two different scenarios there. So let's just unpack them one at a time. The first one you talked about, the absolutely stellar salesperson who is now promoted into a leadership role. And they've got a responsibility, they've got a number that they've got to meet. They're feeling this heightened sense of pressure. And when there's a lot of pressure, it often triggers our worst behaviors. That's why, I do a lot of work in leadership development. It's like, it's not about who you are at your best, because who you are at your best, yeah, you're great, you're awesome. But it's about what is it that derails you, and how do you make sure that you have strategies in place that you can quickly reset yourself, and that you don't turn into an over controller,
Correct.
suddenly micromanaging, making others feel undermined. Because while you might get the number this quarter, because I've just jumped in over your head, Bernadette, and I've landed this and I've closed that and I've done that. One, I've disempowered you immensely.
Completely.
Two, I may have actually done some trust even with the client. When that pressure can be driving to nail the sale versus what's actually in the best interest of my customer right now. Maybe they needed some support or help on something else, and I've just missed it because all I am is just focused on a particular number. And so I think just asking yourself, I know this from my time working with a lot of C-suite execs, is there's a difference. I think of it as we talk about moving from being a manager to a leader and then to being an executive. And they're all kind of a step change. And moving from being like a sales manager, or where you're an individual contributor, to being someone who's responsible for others, you've got to shift your mindset. It's not about what I can do. It's about what I enable to get done by others. Am I helping everyone underneath me build the competence,
Mm.
build the confidence so that they're going to be getting more over the line? Because I can't scale myself. So, how do I help set up these 6 people underneath me so that they're actually growing in their confidence, their ability, their skill? And how can I be coaching them up to them level up? Because that's far more sustainable. And it's actually going to be what, over the longer haul, leads to a whole different level of results.
Results, absolutely. And I'm seeing it play out now. Leaders are saying more activity, more activity, more activity, but they don't have the courage or the bravery to actually take a moment and observe themselves.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the presence that you bring, that quality, your inner state, like inner mastery, is what impacts outer effectiveness. And so if you're stressed out and I'm like, that's going to, it takes 7 seconds for emotions to spread. And so that's spreading out there, that anxiety, that never brings out the best in people.
True.
You are never going to bring out the best in people by just being completely riding them and stressed out. So you got to manage your internal state here. But that brings me to the second example you gave a minute ago about family-owned businesses.
Yeah.
And it's my brother-in-law. I had a situation where the woman was the CEO and her husband came into the business and he was head of sales. And he actually that wasn't his strength. And now this is a marriage.
Yeah, this is exactly what, yes.
Now, a marriage is a different thing than a brother-in-law, but still, you want to take care of the relationship. This isn't just someone you might never see again. You want to take care of the relationship. But I know it's been said 1,000 times, but the quality of any relationship is its ability to hold the truth. And if I can't speak up of something that's really weighing me down in a respectful way that takes care of your dignity, then actually I'm not doing our relationship any favors, and I'm sure not doing you any favors either. And not everyone is meant to be in the roles they're in, right? And often with family businesses, they're in the roles because they're related and the role needed to be filled. But no one is thriving when they're not doing a job well. No one is thriving when they're in a role that they're not gifted for, that they're not enjoying doing. And if you're not getting results quarter after quarter, you're not having a great time. So keeping someone in a role because it gives them a salary is actually not, you actually are doing them a much bigger disservice than you might think, even though it might be hard for them to hear.
I agree. And that whole ability, it's interesting because courageous leadership or, courage sounds great in theory. But when you're working in an environment where the ability to be honest and to speak up, speak truth to power maybe, or even just be honest about where you're at, sometimes that can carry risk. And that risk could be political inside the organization. It could be personal risk.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think a leader needs to do to be able to speak truth to power in their role, in whichever role they are, being honest and not feeling that their position or their role or their credibility is being threatened?
Well, there's obviously there's what we say and there's how we say it. And I always think, you got to ask yourself, is it true? Like, is this true or is this an opinion? And 2, will it serve? Because sometimes we might think something and I'm like, I really think this about Bernadette, but you know what? I don't think right now she can hear it. I don't think this is going to get a positive outcome. Maybe let me just think about this, how to go about it. Let me build some more trust. And maybe in a month's time, I'll have that conversation. But I think, well, firstly, you've got to decide. I think there has never been a more important time for us to decide who it is we want to be as a leader. What kind of human, what kind of leader do I want to be? I want to have integrity. I want to be uplifting. I want to manage accountability because when I don't manage it, that actually isn't fair on anybody. And when we have that kind of clarity, it's like the North Star. Okay, well then what is that calling me to do right now? So, a concept I actually wrote about in the Courage Gap is putting to be before do. Put your to be list ahead of your to-do list. Who is it you need to be?
Yeah.
Now, is there a chance, is there a risk that things mightn't go well, that there could be a negative ramification? 100%. I mean, if you knew 100% this was going to just be, a walk down, through the roses, then it wouldn't require courage. So there often is some level of risk, but recognize, firstly, that there is also a risk to you not doing this. When you don't speak up, and we often treat the future time much more cheaply. We go, oh my gosh, this person could get upset. I could lose my job. I might, all these things. Yeah. But what we're really lousy at doing is stepping into the shoes of us 6 months, a year from now, 2 years from now, and saying, what's the situation likely going to be if I don't do it? So
really, really, really important point.
You've got to play this forward, because there's a cost to that too. And the research shows that when people step in and have these difficult, awkward conversations, 90% of the time, they look back and go, I should have done it sooner. It wasn't as bad as I thought. In fact, it actually wasn't that bad at all.
Never is.
But even if it was kind of awkward, I still should have done it sooner, because now I've addressed the issue. And often we suffer, we create more stress for ourselves, cumulative stress, by putting off me addressing a frustration with my colleague, with my boss, with someone on my team. We suffer more from the cumulative frustration, resentment, overworking it, other people being unhappy, than we do when we just have it. So just recognize, when we're doing the risk reward, we often discount the future cost of it. We overestimate how difficult it's going to be. And we usually regret that we didn't do it sooner. And just recognizing, when you have those conversations, you're now opening the door to addressing it. You're giving someone feedback that they may have been blind to. Or if it's someone on your team, you do them a disservice when you're not giving them an opportunity to understand how they're coming across, or what they're not doing as well as they could be. But when it comes to speaking truth to power, we use that sentence often in the context of they've got power and I don't. The fact is,
Correct.
We all have power.
We do.
And sure, they may have positional power, you don't. But while truth often gets diluted as it goes upwards, my experience is most people in power appreciate hearing information that bad news, something they don't like, so long as it's presented in a way that doesn't feel disrespectful to them. And so how you framing that in a way of, I know, like, we're on the same team. I know you really care about this business. I know you really care about this. And so I'd love to just share with you my perspective on this if you're open to it. And like, well, sure, Margie, let me know. Well, here's something I've noticed. And I'm not sure, you probably know things that I'm not aware of, but here's how I'm seeing things. I'm curious, what is it that you're seeing in this regard? And so you're going about it in a way that's inquiring, you're curious, you're not saying you're a bloody idiot, what are you doing? It's how you go about it. And I think when we present our opinion as the truth, we are 100% guaranteed to get people offside. Like, don't tell me that I'm doing the wrong thing. Don't accuse me of that. But when you go about it with starting with the right intention, I always say, start with heart. What is your highest intention for this conversation? People sense it. You don't have to be perfect with words. You don't have to have it scripted out from ChatGPT. I just want to raise this. I know we both want to make this successful. Here's what I'm seeing. What do you see? And it allows a space for a conversation to occur. And maybe it goes the way you don't. Maybe you learn something. But I think just recognizing that the conversations that we most need to have are usually those we least want to have. They're awkward. They're uncomfortable. None of us like to say things that people mightn't like to hear. But that actually we build trust when we go about them in the right way, or respectfully, taking care of the dignity of someone, with curiosity, with humility. And it actually creates the space for just a really valuable conversation, even if we don't see things eye to eye. And so just every day, what you're doing and how you go about it is building your currency of trust. And it's great to be building it before you need to spend it.
I love the way that you said that. And I think the word respect comes through out of that sharing that you've just done. And also, I think, I know you speak on vulnerability and courage as well. And I think that that word vulnerability comes into it to a degree as well, rather than like speak truth to power. We hear that. Well, you're right. We do hear that. And what does it mean? But sometimes it's the ability for you to have that conversation from a space of vulnerability.
Yeah. I had someone once and she had to give feedback and she said, Margie, I haven't slept for like 3 nights. I feel terrible. And I said, well, you need to go into the conversation, just being authentic and be real and say, I have really been, putting off perhaps too long, but feeling really anxious about this conversation because actually I really value you and I really appreciate all that you're doing. But there's something I've got to share this with you. And she said actually the person didn't like it because it was basically an assessment that their performance wasn't where it needed to be. But they appreciated that she cared. And I know that sometimes we have to let people go. But if when that person is being let go, you're doing it in a way that shows you genuinely care about the humanity of that person, but it's just not working. It actually shifts their experience of being let go. Because often we feel like that person, like we feel deeply undervalued. It literally cuts to the heart of our identity. Like, I'm not valued. People don't think I'm good enough. But when we can really take care of someone's humanity in the process of saying it's just not working for you to be here, and maybe they've been maybe there's a whole lot of great reasons, but taking care of people. And I think at this time right now, when obviously we're all talking about, Gen AI and technology that starts running more of our lives and managing so many tasks, I think people appreciate more than ever when we bring our humanity into the conversations and we share, this is hard for me. I'm not sure I'm going to say this the right way, but it's really important. And I want you to hear it because I know that you are wanting to live a really meaningful life and have a lot of success. And I know that you wanted to make a success of this role. And, here's what I'm seeing.
It's interesting because I think when you go in with the intention of removing any form of those entanglements, because that's really what they are, it releases your mind, because we've got split energy. There will always be energy thinking, I've got to speak to that person, or I'm not enjoying the role, or this is too tough for me, or am I doing something wrong and I don't want to put my hand up. And that's just taking up space in our brain.
It actually keeps us from being more creative, from doing more, etc.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I think to that point, and sometimes, let's face it, we work with people who are complete blip a-holes, and I'm not sure if I'm allowed to swear on this podcast.
Oh, you can do whatever you want.
We work with people who honestly you're like, oh, I don't respect them. They're a complete and utter fill in the blank. And you're like, okay, I mightn't respect how they've behaved, but just always distinguish behavior in the person and I get it. I've worked with those people too. And, you can have that, what is that German word for Schadenfreude or whatever, when you kind of take a little bit of delight in their downfall. Yeah. But you know what? In those moments, just try and be a tiny little bit bigger. You don't know what little wounded 5-year-old is running the show in that person that's driving them to act in all the ways they have. You don't know what happened to them a long time ago that has scarred them so deeply that they act the way they do. Yeah. So if you don't like them, at least have some pity for that 5-year-old in them that's still running their world.
And that is a great distinction, because I have done that. I have looked at, and I picture that person as a little 5-year-old boy, and it just diffuses any form. It just shifts my energy completely, and therefore my attitude.
And all those behaviors that you find so repugnant, so incredibly offensive, etc., those behaviors are adaptive for the 5-year-old or 7-year-old or 12-year-old kid who suddenly had to behave a certain way in order to protect themselves.
Yeah.
They were really adaptive, and they obviously haven't done the work, which is, part of why we all got to work on ourselves, because now they're a grown up, and in the workplace, those behaviors are going to, they're an Achilles heel. But this is where you got to manage your own inner state, and often other people's buttons press our buttons, and then we end up with, 2 boys, as I've seen, 2 boys in a little punch up, and really it's 2 5-year-old boys having a punch up, and they're actually 50-year-old men.
Yeah, but that's exactly right.
It's the 2 5-year-old boys punching each other up in an office setting. And of course, I'm not just speaking about men, women, we can get pulled
We
in
can do
different
it.
ways to those
Totally.
kind of lower order behaviors. But I just think, this is where, I mean, part of my work is, how do you address the potential things that derail you from showing up as the person you want to be, from engaging with others, and whether that's bringing value to your clients and being able to really, negotiate a strong deal that ultimately they get a ton of value and you get a nice big, sales bonus, whatever, but that you're doing it from that place of intention. And I think the
Yeah.
intention, the presence that we're bringing, like all of that has an impact on it, even without this sounding woo woo, on an energetic level,
Oh,
you know.
that is so not, that's so my language. It's definitely an energetic level. And I know in your book, so the courage gap, and it's the 5 steps to braver action. And so you've got 5 principles.
Mm-hmm,
And the first one is focusing on what you want, not what you fear. And
mm-hmm.
so I think, we've kind of spoken a little bit about that. The second one is challenging your limiting stories.
Yeah.
And so that links into the 5-year-old. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
how does
Mm-hmm.
a leader who's sitting as CEO of a multinational, and we've all got our 5-year-olds that are with us, how does that guy or lady, woman, how do they challenge their limiting stories from your framework?
Well, firstly, just play that story forward. And if you play that, our stories obviously they're not just descriptive, like whether it's a label I put on myself, label I put on you, label I put on my future. I'm never going to be good at this. I can't do that. These people are all like that. Our stories impact the actions we take and hence the outcomes that we live in. And so we create our stories, but then they're self-generative. They become self-fulfilling prophecies.
They do.
So, I always say to people, tell me what's not working in your life. And there is a story right there that is inviting you to rewrite it, to rescript it. And if they're not making you feel more powerful, more purposeful, and more positive about your future, they're actually holding you back. Our beliefs are the operating system of behavior. And sometimes the stories that help protect us and helped us be a super achiever, a sales winner, getting
Yep,
the first place every year and the president's
absolutely.
circle, actually can derail us as we climb up a ladder and we move along in our careers. The technical expertise that got us to this point actually isn't insufficient to get us to the next point. And so just asking yourself, what is it I would have to believe
Mm,
for
mm.
me to create the outcomes that I really want?
I
What would I
yeah,
need to believe to be
I
true?
I agree, and it is flipping the story. It's you putting it in the future, and I always like say who is the version of you that is in the future, and how do we bring him or her to today? Because that picture or that story is different than the one that you're living in, because we live in the past so much.
Yeah. And
Um,
often we're protecting an identity. We are often protecting the identity that we've had,
Forever.
and it actually keeps us from growing into who we can be. So
Mm.
we're protecting the past. And it's a little coincidence. Right now, I am speaking to you from a place called St. Michael's, Maryland, on the Chesapeake Bay. And it is a big crab country. I mean, it's oysters and crabs. And the crab, it grows, it's got a shell. And it gets to a point where if it's outgrown its shell, like it's got too big for the shell that's holding it. And so it has to shed its shell. And when it's shedding its shell, it becomes kind of vulnerable because it's got a soft
Mm.
shell. And so it
Mm.
feels vulnerable. It is vulnerable. It's uncomfortable. And often it's not who it was, but it's not yet who it can be. And so for all of us, as we go through lives, it's a great metaphor. Sometimes we've outgrown
Mm-hmm.
the stories we've told about ourselves that protected us at
Correct.
some point. And there's this period where, well, I don't feel like I've fully got a new shell yet. I'm not quite sure. And it's a little uncomfortable and we can often want to retreat. But stay in that place, embrace the growing pains and tell yourself a story. You know, who I am right now is far more than who I've been in the past. And it's yet not who I can become in the future.
The future.
And embrace those growing pains. The sense of vulnerability, actually, that tells you that you are growing, because we cannot grow when we're only feeling safe.
Because that was a question I was going to ask you, is how does a leader actually choose vulnerability when they have shown up in the same way over and over and over? And vulnerability comes with it. I mean, Brené Brown's spoken about it, like it's just such a buzzword sometimes. Vulnerability can also, too much information is not where I'm coming from. So it's not that vulnerability to share so much of yourself. I'm not talking about that.
No.
But from a leader, and typically men, because vulnerability is a feminine trait, a more of feminine trait, and men being very masculine, how does that energy, and we come back to energy again, how do they tap in and choose vulnerability when they are leading a team and the team's expectations of them today are so different because of the times that we're in?
Yeah, well, as Brené Brown says, vulnerability is the truest measure of courage. And often, particularly men, because there is a gender difference in how we relate to vulnerability. But for men, often the biggest shame trigger is being weak. Whereas for women, it's not being attractive or beautiful, right?
Exactly.
So we're all preening ourselves and the guys are proving they're strong, right?
Correct.
And so this fear of being perceived as weak or inadequate, but actually it's the greatest way we get to show strength. And it is a superpower for strength. And to your point, and I'm glad you raised it, because I've seen people think vulnerability is me sharing everything I struggle with and telling you every deep, dark secret or shaming thing that I have. No, because actually that is not of service.
Correct.
And that's still driven by me trying to prove something. But I think of it as just bracing the full spectrum of your own humanity and being thoughtful about what you're sharing, but in a way that's not about me proving something. It's about me pulling down all of the armor and the persona I have. I got it all together all the time, and just being a little bit more real. Because when we share with people like, you know what, I struggled with this, I failed with that, I haven't figured out how to solve this. And we do it selectively. It's not we share that with everyone, because we have to be thoughtful about, is this going to be of service?
Correct.
But it actually gives people an opening to connect with us on a human level. And being all together and all perfect and all strong and nothing cracks me. Actually, people have no way to connect with you. And so just allowing yourself to be someone that people can connect with. It's like, and I think of it, I think of like what it is to be, humble isn't thinking less of yourself. It's thinking about yourself less. I think of it also as being willing to occupy the space that life asks of you with your full humanity. Like, I'm not perfect.
I really, really like that. I so agree. And I mean, it could be little things like taking feedback or just saying what you said. Look, I haven't got it together around that, or I'm not quite sure, or admitting you're wrong.
I'm still learning. I'm still learning this.
We're all, and you said we're humanity. It's like, because we're human.
And I think right now, this moment we are in right now, and we're going to look back in 10 years and look at, say, Gen AI and go, oh my gosh, it's like when we first saw a computer and we didn't know how to, what do you do with it? We're going to probably look back on this moment right now like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The fact is, we are not so much in an era of change. We are in the change of an era. I really think we are in a revolutionary moment. And with that said, there is no playbook for navigating the path ahead right now. We've never been here before, not with this technology, not in this moment, with even the state that the world is in.
Yeah.
And so just acknowledging, guys, I don't have all the answers. I'm not sure what's coming. We may roll this out and find in, 2 months' time that actually that way we were doing it isn't the best way. But let's just move forward and let's just be sharing with what's working and not working, so that we're not taking 6 months to figure out that we're on the wrong strategy.
Yeah.
And so, I invite you, to help me do this, to get everyone teaming. Let's be rowing together, knowing that I don't know what the future holds. It's uncertain, but what I am certain about are these values. And these values are going to guide me, because when people might know the boss doesn't have a lot of things in their control, but at least they're in control of themselves and they can be certain of that. It helps to create the safety that courage requires, that experimentation requires, that innovation requires.
Yeah, I agree. And connection and co-creation and collaboration, because we are all in the same boat at exactly. It was a bit like COVID. For the first time ever, every single corner of the world was in exactly the same state, exactly the same, moment in time where none of us knew what was happening. And I think now in business leadership and teams and clients, and I think we're all in the same boat again with the way that technology and the world and everything is at the moment. So I think co-creation and connection. We need connection because it could be taken away from us on such, big levels. So I love that. Margie, I have loved this conversation. I want you to just hold your book up again. One more time.
Now, thank you for reminding me to get it off the shelf.
Yes, I know. So the Courage Gap, and I'll put in the show notes how to contact you, how to connect with you rather, and where to buy the book. It's at bookstores everywhere.
Yeah, you'll find it wherever.
It was in Fifth Avenue. Did I see it?
Yes. Yeah, Barnes & Noble, the windows, Fifth Avenue windows. Yeah, that was kind of cool.
Well done, you.
Yeah.
Well done. A girl from the Australian bush, dairy farm.
Yeah. Well, it just goes to show when you consistently are willing to feel vulnerable and put yourself out there in pursuit of things that are inspiring, all sorts of amazing things happen over time.
I know, the one little step at a time. And speaking of putting yourself out there, I finished this show with what I call a rapid fire. So it's 5 quick questions, one word answers.
Hopefully I'll have a quick answer. Okay.
You will be fine. Uncertainty is
life.
Oh, that was a good one. Emotions are
contagious.
Courage creates
possibilities.
Vulnerability in leadership demonstrates
security.
Oh, I was going to say strength. Security, yes. Influence comes from
trust.
I love it. When we talk about the courage gap, I'm going to encourage people to encourage. There we go. Encourage. I just clicked with that. To go and buy Margie's book. I actually have your other book, or one of your other books, Stop Playing Safe.
Yeah.
And I just want to, I guess, share my thoughts on influence. And I think it correlates to what you've been saying. When you can create change in you, you can create change around you.
Amen. Leadership is from the inside out. Yeah.
Absolutely. So on that note, I want to say a big thank you, Margie. And to everybody watching and listening, we will see you this time next week here on, I was going to say the Courage Gap, but on the Influence Gap. Have an amazing day. Speak to you soon. Bye for now. That's a wrap on today's episode of the Influence Gap. If this resonated with you, share it with a CEO or a sales leader who you think needs to hear it. And make sure that you subscribe so that you never miss one single episode. If you are ready to close the gap between your message and the impact you want to make, come and find me at BernadetteMcClelland.com. I'll see you this time next week. Bye for now.